I want to talk about this because I know you talked about this on your show, but we didn't get to talk about it. Let's talk about the Philly guy, Hayes, right?
Marcus Hayes. Yeah, I've been reading
Marcus
him for a
Hayes.
long time.
Over the line?
Yes, 100% over the line.
Has he said anything about that? Like, has he
Marcus
said,
Hayes?
like, you know what, I probably went too far?
No, I don't think so. Not that I would assume that I would have saw something, but you can't assume.
That's like, that to me, there's like a Black Mirror Twilight Zone aspect, to bring Twilight Zone back into this, of like people who are just in, especially columnists who are in that for so long.
Yeah.
And they just think they can say whatever. And they have a great following like Hayes does, like Shaughnessy does in Boston. They got a good enough following that there's always going to be people telling them, hey, you suck. Why did you say this? But that just becomes
their thing.
White noise.
Yeah.
Because there's enough people who are saying, oh, yeah, but Hayes is holding them accountable. I also think Embiid should be playing, you know, and there's enough of that they're like, I can keep doing this.
I do. First of all, I think his point is right. Like, I think that Embiid should be in better shape when he gets to the team.
That vacuum, that is correct.
So that's the truth. So I don't think he's soft or he's faking injuries. I think he doesn't work hard enough in the offseason to get his body where he needs to be when the season starts, and he doesn't get a pass like Shaq did because he's never won a title. And maybe it's because he's never had the supporting cast, but like, I don't want to hear about that. Like, don't tell me about the waves in the ocean, dude. Just get that ship in the harbor, dude.
Yeah. And I would leave the dead brother thing out of it, but
yeah, I mean,
that was for shock value.
And it was a terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
Like the way, do you know the way he worded it? Did you read it?
It was like he's dedicating his career to like his late brother, who he named his kid after,
who died in a tragic accident.
And part of like having a great career is showing up to work. You got to show up to work. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, you could do a really good biting column about what we just talked about. You know, Joel Embiid not being in shape and letting his teammates down. And, you know, it might come off a little harsh, but this is over the line.
Look.
And that is like if he's bitching about like Joel Embiid confronting him, it's like you have to know as a journalist.
And I don't know that he's bitching about that.
Do have consequences. I don't think he has.
No, I think he showed up because remember now he's a columnist and he did make it a point because there was some scuttlebutt like Embiid had been looking for him at like the day before or 2 days before, whether a shoot around or a practice. And so Marcus Hayes knew, like, I gotta show up.
Yep.
I gotta like, which is like the right thing to do. Like, and that's why a lot of sports writers keep their street cred with the players, because if I write something about you, I'm going to be at practice the next day. And if you want to talk
like beat guys so much.
Yeah, that's why it's true, because that they're and I'll tell you why I like beat guys, because the players like beat guys, because beat guys are at every practice, they're at every shoot around, they're at every game. And they develop a familiarity with the players. And the players, whether they like it or not, or it's a subconscious, respect the craft and that they're always there. Like, there's something to be said for that. Like a Wednesday before Thanksgiving game, a shoot around in the morning when everybody would probably rather be somewhere else, or Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day. And you guys are both there. You're the writer. I'm the player. It bridges some gaps.
That's one of the nice things you said about me.
Yeah.
Early on in our relationship.
You always show up.
You said you're there.
I go to the games.
I don't get to go to as much anymore, mainly because of jobs like this, which I feel does lose my cred a little bit. You know, I'm not at every press conference anymore. I do post game, so I don't make all the post game pressers. You know, I can't go to practice availability, so it's different.
I'm appreciative. Last point on this topic. Yeah. I'm appreciative that in the wake of the pandemic, that we really are back more in person than I think a lot of people maybe ever thought, especially players and coaches, as far as like having to deal with the media. Like, you know, that Marcus Hayes, Joel Embiid thing happened in the locker room. You know, locker rooms are opened up again after games, after like the 10-minute cooling off period. And for the same reason, locker rooms are open before games. And just being around, I'm telling you, going to that locker room, players seeing you, seeing that you're working, helps these writers get better stories and develop better relationships. And it rewards the writers who show up.
I do want to talk about Joel Embiid a little bit, because now we've gotten to a segment that I can actually put a thumbnail to and post it. I was wondering this yesterday of like, he comes in during the process, right? He's obviously a huge part of it, the trust the process thing. And I just look back on it and I'm like, who was this guy's pro? Like there were not a lot of pros on that team. They were trying to lose.
No.
Right. So there's not a lot of guys in there trying to teach you how to be a professional and how to win. And now all of a sudden, and by that I mean 5 or 6 years ago, it's like, all right, your team, we got to go win. Show them all how to do it, Joel. And a huge part of that gets very underrated is actually taking care of your body. LeBron is the greatest example, right? He's 40 or about to turn 40, and he is in better shape than a lot of guys on his team. He bitches about having to do load management because he doesn't think he needs to, because he keeps his body in tremendous shape. That right there is like a huge part of this that I think even bigger than most fans understand, of like, it's not just the, the basketball IQ or knowing how to talk to the refs, or like, it's taking care of your body is step one.
Yeah.
And it's something that I give great praise to for Tatum and Brown, is like, they might not be the most skilled players in the league, and you want to argue that they're not top 5, not top 3, or whatever the fuck. It's like a huge part of this is that they play 82 games every year. And so, right now, if Giannis gets another big injury, like that's a problem. The Bucks are done. Or Joel Embiid's a great example. Like, is Joel Embiid a better player when he's on than Jason Tatum? Sure. But who am I taking on my team? It's
Tatum.
No question.
Yeah.
It's no question.
Well,
Tatum's
the best
there every night.
The best of ability is availability.
Yeah.
It's like the old saying, but it's true in a lot of cases, especially when you're talking about elite guys in the NBA. If you're not on the floor, what you're doing a major disservice to your team, because more than likely they're built around you being out there and being present and successful. With Embiid, I totally agree with what you're saying, and that's why I had an issue with the process to begin with, because I feel like they bred losers, and that's a little dramatic, but you get what I'm saying.
I mean, that's what they were harboring for, fostering for years.
Yeah. So it was like, let's just lose. And I think there's something to be said about like the competitive DNA. And look, if the ball had bounced a couple different ways for the Sixers in some of those playoff series, and whatever, maybe we'd be having a different conversation about a team with a different legacy, but those balls never bounced in the Sixers' direction. And so now you could say that the process has not been successful. And you could say that someone like Joel Embiid, he's kind of like the last man standing. I was
going to say, even when you look back at it,
he's
while
the face of frustration for me, unfortunately. And apparently all my friends love him. All the Philly guys, people love Embiid. He's a great dude. We all want to see him do well. Like, and again, to what you're saying, I remember Jimmy Lynam, Sixers assistant coach, telling me years ago that Embiid was like the best he's ever seen. And this is not a guy that like blows up stories, or he was like, this guy's amazing. But to your point, clearly there wasn't that nurturing person around him that was able to show him the way.
He needed an Al Horford.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they did play together in Philly for a year.
I need a Tito Horford.
Who doesn't? Yeah. Tito had some issues back in his day, but he seems like a nice guy.
He's got a great name.
But yeah, to your point about the like breeding losers, it's like, obviously they're not necessarily coming out saying we're gonna lose every night. The guys is we're gonna develop young players, and we see that in every sport. We're gonna develop young players and try to get a young core out of this. But it's like, do you go in? All right, you're playing the Washington Wizards on a Wednesday in mid-December. Is that young player, that Joel Embiid, that Ben Simmons, that Nerlens Noel, thinking, how am I going to help the team win tonight? Or are they thinking, what do I need to develop?
Yeah.
Like, do I need to score? Do I need to become a 20, 25 point a game guy? Should I do that tonight? Should I take 20 shots? Like I think there's actually something to that.
Well, and the coach is kind of neutered in that whole situation, because it's like, really, you want us to do this to win? Well, we're not supposed to win. It's
right.
So it's
and I find this, and I know we're talking a lot of Philly here, but this I think ties into Boston big time, because you saw, a franchise that has done it right, I think, in the Celtics, and one that has not gotten it right with the Sixers. They had different starting points, yes. The Celtics had one or two below 500 teams in there. They missed the playoffs once. They were really a lottery team only once. And Philly was that for a couple of years. They were the worst team in basketball. I get that. I get that there's different starting points, but the Celtics, they had different starting points mainly because the Celtics had that mentality to we're going to tank 1 year. Then they get Isaiah Thomas and he's good. And they're like, all right, let's win some games. Let's go to the playoffs. We're not going to beat LeBron in the playoffs, obviously, but it started something. And, all of a sudden, Marcus Smart has that experience year one. And you'd bring in guys, the young guys, Tatum and Brown, and that Brown rookie year team wasn't great as a 1 seed, but they're a 1 seed. They're winning a lot of games.
Yeah.
It is just such a different, kind of harboring ground, whatever you call it there. But when you look back at the process, in terms of a player standpoint, Embiid is the only guy you netted from that, really. Simmons gave you something.
Maxey, but he wasn't a process guy.
He was a little post-process, right? The other guys would be Michael Carter-Williams, Rookie of the Year, Massachusetts guy. Nerlens Noel.
Who was the guy from Ohio State who has Bell's palsy? Great guy.
Evan Turner.
Yeah, he was another process guy.
Second pick in the draft. I said he was going to be better than John Wall. Didn't happen. By the way, I noticed this last night. We talked a little Massachusetts basketball the other day.
Yeah.
How about let's extend it to New England? Who was the number 1 player in high school this year? Who's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft this year?
Oh, what's his face? The guy from Duke.
Cooper Flagg from Maine.
Yeah.
Number 1 high school player in the country this year, AJ DeBonce of Brockton, Massachusetts. They could develop some players, okay?
Let's not get carried away, dude.
I say there's always Massachusetts guys. There's always New England guys in the NBA. I know it's not a hotbed, but there's always guys there. Bruce Brown, Connaughton.
You should have heard the folks in Canada after Wiggins and Anthony Bennett were taken. People were just like, Canada is the spot for new prospects.
Canada's doing well. I had RJ Barrett into there. Minnesota's had some good ones the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Jalen Suggs.
Come to Philadelphia. All right.
Philly's good.
We'll turn you into
Philly's
a champion.
good.
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
A lot of good basketball.
I think Patrick Ewing's better than Wilt. I don't know. What can I say?
Patrick Ewing he's from Jamaica.
No, Cambridge.
Okay.
Cambridge.
He had a cup of coffee in Cambridge because he liked Mike Jarvis.
I think he could spell Ringe and Latin by the time he graduated. But whoa! I'm kidding. He got into Georgetown. I like Patrick Ewing. I can't help it. That's Pete Sousa. He'll be on at 1:00. I guess I'll be there with you at one point, Pete.
Yes,
cannot wait.
I really
talk
do.
about some good basketball.
Yeah, I want to talk about the lid came off for Baylor last night, and what came out was not necessarily attractive. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's just the appetizer. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you filling in today and giving some great insight. Anyway, we will see you high noon Eastern tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central Time, live on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts. It's the Cam Show. We'll see you then.